Everybody tells you about forgiving another person, but has anybody ever told you about forgiving yourself? Yes. When you forgive other people, it is because they offended you. You had a fallout, you had a disagreement, they hurt you. Moving on. But when it comes to forgiving yourself, it is about you sitting down with yourself and analyzing the decisions, the people, the things you did that you feel have actually hurt you. Hello everyone, my name is Sukeji Modi. Welcome to Made to Lead podcast on a very special edition as we explore the subject of forgiving yourself. When we talk about forgiving oneself, or when we talk about forgiving yourself, we're talking about extending grace to yourself for being human, for being weak, and for simply being vulnerable at some point in life. Normally, we live in a society that glorifies a lot of perfectionism. So from the time that you are born, they tell you, you go to school, you finish your secondary education, you finish your university, probably you get a job. After that, you get married, you make a lot of money, probably you travel the world, and then of course that's the end of you. Later you die, we bury you, that's over. But then nobody tells you about the things that might happen in that transitioning stage. So from primary school to high school, there are things that might happen there. From high school to university, there are things. In fact, for university, there are a lot of things that happen there. How about even life after university? What am I saying? Every stage in life comes with various challenges. And today, I'm talking about you being able to look into your life, analyze it, and truly extending grace to yourself. Outside there, are you discouraged? Do you feel weak? Do you feel tired of yourself? Are you even ashamed of yourself because of some decisions that you did? So mostly decisions play a very, very, very key role in your life. Maybe you're outside there and there is one decision that you did that has messed up your life. It could be simple for young people. It could be falling in love with someone, later getting a child as a teenager, and then now you're a whole teen mother, you're a single mother, you're doing life alone. That is not an easy event. It's a very difficult event. It's a disruptive thing that happens into your life. It changes your perspective. It changes who you are. It changes how you see life because it brings new responsibilities to you. But for most people, even after getting children, when they're not prepared, they live in regret. They live in bitterness. That means they're likely to actually frustrate this child that came into this world innocently. And I want to encourage someone outside there. If you know you got a child when you were not ready, or life happened and all of a sudden you had a child, I want to remind you that no child is a divine mistake. Every child is a gift from God, and every child is born with purpose, regardless of even what happened to that union or to that marriage. Every child is a gift from God. And as a parent, you have the role to take care of that child. All right. So enough of the child. What happens to you after maybe probably getting a child, or becoming a mother when you're not prepared, or even becoming a father when you're not prepared? Because we have a lot of teen fathers outside there whose stories are not told. What happens after? You're likely, if you're a girl, you're likely to see yourself as a failure, as somebody who dropped out of school, and then society will start labeling you. They can even label you as someone who's immoral. They can label you as someone who's just not having any good future. There is a way they can make you feel like nobody. But then let me tell you, when society goes silent, you're only left with yourself. That means you and the decisions that you made. That's why if at any point in life you feel there is a decision that you made and it has costed you a lot of things, this podcast is a reminder to tell you that you need to forgive yourself. Yes, forgiving yourself is acknowledging that I understand this thing happened to me. I know that it caused me 1, 2, 3, and I know I suffered because of this decision, but still, I choose to extend grace to you, and I choose to forgive myself. In fact, if you're called Mary, you should actually tell yourself, Mary, I choose to forgive you. Sukeji, I choose to forgive you. Joanne, I choose to forgive you. Martin, I choose to forgive you. This is you extending grace to yourself. Because let me be honest with you, nobody on this earth is ready to forgive you for the sins that only you knows. So in most times, nobody cares about your well-being. You see, the thing about forgiveness with another person or another party is that when they offend you, you know it, they offended you, they know it, they offended you. So when they come later to you for forgiveness, you forgive them. Yes, maybe you don't, and then you part ways. But the thing about yourself is that you can never part ways from yourself. Yes, you can never remove yourself from yourself. That means that you're one. You need to learn how to exist with yourself regardless of the things that you go through. That's why they say that whenever you fall down, you need to get grace to pick up. Picking up means standing up once again. Forgive yourself for that bad decision that you did. Yes, forgive yourself for that bad friend that you made. Maybe you met an amazing friend that you really loved. Let me tell you my story. I once had a friend, and an amazing friend. I really never thought anything could happen. So I think that was 3 years ago. So unfortunately, my friend fell into a custody issue. Yeah, they had issues. It actually brought in police over some items. Let me tell you, my friend was arrested, and after my friend was arrested, they tried looking for the friends also. They said, we're going to look for all friends, we're going to investigate people. And then let me tell you, in that group, a lot of my friends were called for that investigation. By then I was not around, but then later they also tried looking for me. I felt so offended. I was so angry. I was like, as my friend, what do you mean you did this and this and that? And now all of us have become victims. So even in the area, they were saying, oh, there is so-and-so's friend. Oh, your friend was arrested. Your friend is this and this. Your friend did this and that. It's only easier when it's another person, but it's never easy when it is you. Yes. And you personally know there are some friends you really loved so much that you had to let go at some point. Letting them go, as I told you in the previous video, it can be a form of love. Sometimes the best thing you can do to someone is just to let them go, because you cannot change them. But when it comes to decisions, you need to value yourself. Valuing yourself means forgiving yourself. Be very intentional. For that wrong friend, forgive yourself. For that wrong relationship, forgive yourself. For that wrong agreement, forgive yourself. For that wrong course that you did. Yes, sometimes in university, you might have started a course, you dropped out at some point, and now you're doing something else. Forgive yourself. Yes, you deserve that grace, because nobody is coming to forgive you at all. So self-forgiveness is one of the strongest weapons that can actually bring back your self-esteem. If you have been a faithful follower of this podcast, you will notice that we started by low self-esteem as a battle. When you don't forgive yourself, you will struggle with your self-esteem. Oh my goodness. You always feel like you're nobody, because every time you think about yourself, you will think about the things that you did that are not right. You will think about your mistakes, and you will even start thinking that you are the mistake. Yes, you will start thinking you're the mistake. You will start thinking nothing good can come out of you. You start thinking you're nobody. And sadly so, there's so many people that have become victims of suicide, that have become victims of so many horrible things in this world, simply because they did not forgive themselves. You need to forgive yourself. I'm resounding this again and again and again. You need to forgive yourself. You need to forgive yourself. You need to forgive yourself 4 times, 5 times, 10 times. Forgive yourself for all the things. Yeah. Forgive yourself for your childhood. So maybe the first question I can ask you, how was your childhood? The truth is that not everybody had a smooth childhood. Not everybody had a colorful childhood. Not everybody had parents that walked with them to the park, took them for swimming. You might have had a very difficult childhood. Last month, I had an awesome event with very powerful women. And the stories these women told me, it was as if it is actually not them who are doing these great things now. But what makes your past almost impossible for people to believe is when you forgive yourself. So as a child, maybe you went through some of the the worst things that can happen to anyone. Maybe you went through abuse. It could be physical abuse. It could be sexual abuse, sadly so. Maybe you were harassed as a child. You were put into child labor. You were put into very bad situations as a child. So you grew up with you grew up around aversive conditions that have affected your own growth as a child. Some of you even did not play as children. You don't remember running out, playing. You don't remember being hugged. You don't remember being embraced. It's because of some things that you faced in your childhood, and then usually when you look back into those things like abuse, they can actually break you. These are the things that can actually, it might have happened 30 years ago, 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, but it can actually be as fresh as today. But then what is one thing that can help you conquer that is forgiving yourself. Yes, for that crime that you did because you were children, you need to forgive yourself. Because you were a child and you didn't know anything, you were young, you need to forgive yourself. There is power in self-forgiveness, because when you forgive yourself, that's when you'll get the power to even be strong. You get the power to not fear. Some of you are full of fear because of past mistakes that you have done in your lives. Yes, past mistakes that you have done in your life. Maybe probably you're here and then at some point in life, you were a victim of a crime scene that happened. Ever since that day that crime scene ended, and now that you are out, you have been living in fear. Fear from society, fear from your friends, fear from everybody that is around you. This is what lack of self-forgiveness can cause you. You no longer live as a free human being, you live being caged into fear. And the Bible tells us that the spirit of fear is not of God. That means that God designed you to be confident. He designed you to be strong. But sometimes the best way you can help God to make you become who He made you to be is forgiving yourself. Yes, so that is on childhood. After childhood, we move on. Let's talk about your life as an adolescent. For most people, adolescence was the toughest stage in their lives. Well, if you're outside there and maybe you had a very smooth adolescent period, you were a good child, you did well in school, your parents loved you, you loved them back, congratulations. But if you're outside there and you know that you had very tough adolescence period, come closer. You're the people I'm talking to. During adolescence, a lot of things happened. And if you're not careful, you might not actually heal from some of the things that happened then. Let's talk about relationship with parents. As an adolescent, growing up, I feel adolescence is the stage where you tell your parents, you don't understand me. Yes, I actually agree, because at some point I also did that to my parents. I felt like nobody was understanding me. I felt like my parents were not understanding me. The same thing can also happen to you. As an adolescent, it's usually difficult to keep a good relationship with your parents. And for some people, it might have even gone to extremes whereby you had separation with your parent. Some people even had physical fights with their parents. Some people abused their parents. Maybe you said very hurtful words to your parents by then during that stage of your life. After asking for forgiveness from them, you need to forgive yourself too for all those things that you did in that stage. You're not a bad person, but simply it was a stage in life that forced you. For some of you, even you didn't understand how you became violent, how you stopped respecting your parents. And then the saddest part is that maybe as we speak now, your parents are no longer here. Maybe they are late. Maybe your uncle is late. Maybe your auntie is late. And you knew that you had a confrontation with them. You have to forgive yourself for how you treated them. Yes, forgive yourself for the words you say to them. Forgive yourself for the misunderstanding. Still on the adolescent stage, let's talk about the sexual advances. I know mostly when we talk about that, people get a bit shy, but I am here looking into your eyes as we discuss this topic. Normally, as young people during adolescence, you tend to explore a lot of sexual options. You tend to like other people. And for other people, you might even have had a lot of sexual advances with other people that you even didn't know how it happened, or you didn't understand, or maybe you really never intended this thing to happen. But now you're here. Are you still going to be carrying the regrets of yesterday, of what happened when you were an adolescent, of probably the relationships that never worked? How about those ones that worked? How about those ones that you went ahead and you had intercourse with them and you really didn't know? Or even when you did, yes, you knew, but you were just an adolescent. It was a stage in life. You need to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. I remember one time I had the honored to go into a juvenile center. And when I entered that juvenile center, I saw young people that were full of life. I saw young boys and young girls full of life. And then most of them were actually adolescents from the age of 14 to 18. And then if you see most of the crimes that they were brought in, some of them were brought in for defilement. They defiled another minor. Some of them were brought in for some cyber crimes that they committed. But then I looked into those kids inside that juvenile center. And one thing that came to my mind, I said, these people, they need to forgive themselves at some point in life. Because if you don't forgive yourself, and maybe you went through this experience, you were once put in a juvenile center, or you were once put in prison, let me tell you, even if you leave, you'll continue to think or even believe that you're a bad person, you're a mean person, you can never do good in life, So self-forgiveness is very important. It means you're forgiving yourself for the things that only you did and only you committed to yourself. So I want you to know that when it comes to life, there is actually, at some point, you might actually offend yourself with some decisions and some choices. And usually during adolescence, I want you to forgive yourself for all the sexual advances, the sexual errors that you feel you committed when you were a bit younger. So if we move on during your adolescence as well, there can be issues to do with a lot of aggression. Some boys become very aggressive during that season. They're seeing themselves, they're growing. Somebody's having muscles. The voice is becoming deeper. Yes, most boys become very difficult to be controlled by parents. And some girls, yes, but not really common. So during that period of time, I know people who committed crimes in that season. I know people who fought, people who injured other people during that season. But now they are adults. Most of them are adults today. What is the message? The message is that even when you look back into that season of your life, may you extend grace to yourself. As an adolescent, extend grace to yourself. For the malpractice that you committed, extend grace to yourself. You deserve to forgive yourself for the things that you committed against you during the season of growth. When you never knew a lot, when you were just young, when you were just innocent, life happens. And you see, the thing with life is that it never waits for you to know better. It always continues. So you have to forgive yourself. Some of even for the things you watched online, you need to forgive yourself. And you need to just change. Yes, you need to forgive yourself. You need to just change for the fights that you became part of even without knowing. Nowadays, people inherit battles. For example, if you're my friend and there's somebody I don't like, I can actually recruit you to join me in not liking that person. No, if you know you've ever been a victim of that, you deserve to forgive yourself, because as an individual, you possess the purity, the power, the will, and the innocence to become the best version of yourself. And you also have the responsibility to mend the quality of the person that you are. Yes, that means if you knew or if you know that the kind of life that you have or the ones that you once lived were not really so good and you feel like you want to do better, welcome to the world of possibility. You can definitely do better. You can rise once again, because forgiving yourself is the first chapter to becoming whole once again. That means for that accident that happened, you will no longer blame yourself because you have forgiven yourself. Forgiving yourself means calling out yourself because life happened. So allow me to share with you the 5 reasons why you should forgive yourself. 5 solid reasons why you should forgive yourself. Number 1 is because of influence. So I want to assure you that most of the things, if you look into most of the decisions that you took in life, it was not because of you. It was not your own sound judgment. It was because of influence. Normally, it's because of friends. When you have friends around you, sometimes it's even family influence. Let's talk about, for example, relationships. Maybe there is probably someone you really don't have any attachment or connection with, but then your friends continue to tell you, no, he's a good person, you have to give it a try. So because of them, you choose to commit, and then after committing there, probably things don't work out so well. Maybe it turns out abusive, you were beaten or you beat him, one person injured the other person. Later on, when we try to analyze into what happened, you might be quick to judge yourself because you are with this person. But we should not forget the place of influence. Influence is very powerful. Some of you have fought with people that you should not have fought simply because somebody influenced you. And nowadays, since we're in the digital era, the social media has become one of our biggest influence. So one person can send a tribalistic article online, and then one community will go and fight with another community. That's it. That means you have actually influenced people to do something bad. The same way you have the power to influence someone to do something good, you also have the power to influence yourself and other people to do something good. So I want you to protect your influence. Be very careful about the people you listen to, the conversations you entertain, because they will definitely shape who you are. Yes, definitely shape who you are. Secondly, the reason as to why you should forgive yourself is because you did not know. Let me be honest with you. There are some errors you'll commit in this life, not because you're bad, but because you just didn't know that these things could turn out this way. I don't know which example to give you, but I'm sure you can relate with some things in your life. Yes, some of you became victims of very unavoidable circumstances simply because you really never knew it could turn out this way. You never knew that A could become Z or Z could become B at some point in life. So usually when you don't have enough knowledge about a thing, you're likely to actually flop. Very much flop. Yeah? How about we look into the aspect? How many young people outside here have decided to go into very desperate journeys just because of excitement? They didn't know enough. Like for example, personally, my heart is always saddened by the number of young people we continue to lose every day on the road from Africa to Europe. How people risk on those desperate journeys. People go on boats, whole family dies, something like this happen, and they go. Personally, that really breaks my heart because I feel it is something that is so painful. Imagine somebody waking up one day and going for it. Most of them are thinking of the greener pastures. Most of them are not even thinking of the circumstances that they will face, maybe say the other dangers that they will face on the way. So in most cases, people do wrong choices in life, or you can actually fall into an error because you never knew enough. I had a conversation with a very old woman. Age is a blessing. So I think this year she should be 86 years old. And she told me when they were girls, they just didn't know enough. At least today we have a lot of sources to learn about our bodies and everything. So during that time, they didn't know enough. So some of them, they actually thought maybe if they start their menstruation, they just need to run into a man's house and get married. They are now older, they are now bigger. They didn't know enough. So imagine a young girl of that generation who maybe ran and then later became a mother as a teenager. She might actually feel angry with herself for doing that decision. But sometimes when you don't know enough, you're likely to become a victim. So forgive yourself for the things you never knew. Some of you, the relationships or the marriage that failed, you really had no idea that it was going to flop out this way. But just forgive yourself. Because when you forgive yourself, that's when you will recognize that, honestly, I didn't have full knowledge about A, B, and C. But now that I know better, I choose to pick myself. You choose to pick yourself once again, yeah? And then thirdly, the reason why you should forgive yourself is because life happens. Yes, life happens. Now, I understand that usually we're used of theories, they tell you, when you finish school, you get a job, you get married. But what if life happens and things don't work out the way we are planning? Life happens. Some of you have become victims of some sad circumstances, not because you're a bad person, but life happened. Life happened. Losing someone you think is because somebody plans. Nobody plans to lose a loved one. Nobody plans to lose a mother. Nobody plans to lose a father. Nobody plans to lose a spouse. Nobody plans to lose a neighbor. But because life happens, that's why there are some things that are hidden from us as human beings, things like grief and loss, you cannot tell. So probably when somebody loses a spouse, life has happened to that person. You will not blame them. You don't tell them, oh, you are not careful. Oh, no. Or maybe when somebody loses a child, you don't come back to them and tell them you are careless, this and this happened. No. As a matter of fact, if you have nothing to say, don't even tell them anything, because whatever you're going to tell them is definitely going to hurt them, So in most cases, in such situations, you need to acknowledge that sometimes the vicissitudes of life can be very difficult. Life can be very challenging, and there are some circumstances that you went through. It's just because life happened. So if life happens, what do? You also happen. But how do you happen? You happen by forgiving yourself. Yes. Recognize that at some point you had no power, you had no control. Things happened. As human beings, we love controlling things. Yeah. We love to control things. We say, we finish with A, I want to do B. If I do B, I want to do C. But no, life happens. And sometimes things might not happen the way we are planning. You might not get the contract the way you're thinking. You might not get the position the way you're thinking. But then what happens after that? What happens after that is you pick up yourself. And after picking up yourself, that is when you get the courage, you get the tenacity to actually look into life with wholeness. Because until you forgive yourself, then you are not whole. When you don't forgive yourself, there are a lot of things that you lose. You lose your peace. Some of you are not peaceful with yourselves. When you're not peaceful with yourself, it's very difficult for you to be peaceful with another person. Because what happens is that you cannot give what you don't have. So as yourself, if you're not peaceful with yourself, as you're watching me, if you're not peaceful with yourself, it's very difficult for you to even be peaceful with another person. So the best way to be peaceful with other people is first to build peace with yourself. Because if you can get that solitude with yourself, then that means you can pour from your cup and give another person peace. So forgiveness is very important, especially forgiving yourself. Is very, 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 very important, because you need to walk out of the narratives of shame, the false belief because of what happened to you 10 years ago, or what happened to your parents, or probably how life didn't work out so well. You need to forgive yourself. And sometimes forgiving yourself means waking up, dusting up yourself and confronting yourself. As a matter of fact, you need to actually have a meeting with yourself. Sit down and look at what are the things that I went through that are still affecting me today. And have I really forgiven myself? Forgiveness is like a well and a miracle that can liberate your soul. And you absolutely have a responsibility to forgive yourself. Because for another person, we can mediate, we can help you. But when it comes to you, you are the only pillar of excellence that can actually forgive yourself. So today, I invite you into a journey whereby you start being confident, you start being comfortable, where you look at yourself in the mirror once again and you smile, where you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't live in regrets, but rather you live in the joy that it shall definitely be well, regardless of what I went through yesterday. Thank you.